Welcome to another review. Today we're talking about a book that I fucking hated. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to my channel if you are new here. Welcome back if you are returning. My name is Brittany. On this channel, I share my stupid opinion on books. So without further ado, here is my cawpile review for Purple Hearts by Tess Wakefield. Y'all, this one drained the life out of me reading it. You can see that I was tabbing. I kind of gave up at some point. So here we go. Cassie Salazar is a paralegal and she is fired in the opening sentences of this book, which leads her to be able to pursue her dream of being a full-time musician, which is great. She, alongside her bandmates, Nora and Toby, make up this indie band called The Loyal. Luke Morrow is fresh from Army training at Fort Hood, Texas, and is on 2 weeks of leave before deploying to Afghanistan. On a night out with him and his buddies from the Army, which includes Cassie's childhood friend Frankie, Luke meets and flirts with Cassie. Cassie is immediately attracted to Luke, but only until they start talking, at which point it is abundantly clear that they are not going to like each other and they have incredibly different worldviews. A few nights later, Cassie is performing with The Loyal. She has a medical emergency, which leads to her having to take an ambulance ride and an equally expensive hospital stay. Cass is diagnosed with diabetes. I don't remember which type. I didn't write it down in my notes. I'm so sorry. Which leads Cassie to start contemplating, how am I going to pay for everything? I lost my job. I'm not insured. I'm a struggling musician. I can't let my mom pay for this. Which leads her to propose marriage to Frankie because she's read that you can get basic allowance for housing and family separation allowance if you're married to a military service member. Cassie, like I said, proposes to Frankie, who turns her down because he's in love with his girlfriend, but Luke is ear hustling to this whole conversation and says, hey, you know what? I'll marry you. So we have a marriage of convenience. Cass needs money to afford her diabetes treatment, and Luke needs money to pay off his former drug dealer. The two develop this alliance where they're each going to take $1,000 of the extra allowances that Luke will be afforded through the Army and move along down their merry way while Luke is deployed. So Luke goes on deployment. Shit happens in Afghanistan. He comes home because he's gravely injured and now awaiting discharge, and we are picking it up. All right, let's talk about the characters. Cassie from the start has like this chip on her shoulder from her father who left her when she was a child. Her and her mom disagree on everything, even though she's supposed to be like the light of her mother's life. Cassie attended college majoring pre-law, and her mom is like desperate for her to go to actual law school. Pre-law makes no further appearance, and Cassie's super dead focused on making music, which is cool. One thing that I really just did not like is that Cassie constantly alludes to music as a forest, and I just really hated that. Luke is a recovering opioid addict, and he enlisted in the Army basically to force himself to get clean. He, to me, felt very underdeveloped in the sense that he doesn't really take a solid stance on anything ever. He's kind of a bystander, really. His Army buddies are out here talking about like very racist things, and he's just kind of like, yeah, my friends. He doesn't argue with them. He doesn't really try to like call them out for their word choices or anything. The only really redeeming quality that I found in him was when he finally mourned the loss of one of his friends who died in Afghanistan. Frankie is Cassie's childhood friend, is enlisted with Luke. He's kind of there, like to me, as comedic relief probably, and to kind of fuel the sham of the marriage because he kind of doesn't really play a role outside of Cassie and Luke. Nora is perhaps the most interesting of characters because she is for sure a girl's girl. She supports every decision that Cassie makes except for the decision to marry Luke fraudulently. She is the mastermind behind the band's Fleetwood Fridays, which I loved, and she's kind of the driving factor behind the band outside of Cassie. Toby really served no other purpose other than being the person that Cassie spends the entire time that Luke is deployed cheating on Luke with, and I didn't love that. He is also the person that Cassie actually cheats on when she decides to hook up with Luke at some point. My favorite character was Mittens. That's the dog that Cassie buys for Luke to help him cope with his trauma. So overall, characters were not great, and I gave it a 2 out of 10. For the atmosphere, in this book, we are set in Austin, Texas, and Afghanistan. That's literally all I can tell you. I've never been to either of those places. Couldn't picture anything. It was very much a situation situation where the movie was not playing in my head. I haven't seen the movie either, but there was no film playing in my head because I couldn't picture anything. Atmosphere was a 1 out of 10. It wasn't really relevant to the story because the story is basically fraudulent marriage. Writing wasn't good, wasn't bad. Imagery, excessive, especially the part about the forest and Cassie's music. Extremely, extremely annoying. I'm sorry to say it if you loved it. This was a 4 out of 10 for the writing. It wasn't the best for me, but it wasn't the worst. I've read worse. Plot. Our entire plot in this book, outside of the fraudulent marriage, we are focused entirely on Cassie becoming a star of in music. The subplot was the marriage of convenience, especially when I sit here and consider that for the entirety of this book, Cassie was involved with 2 men at the same time. Toby while Luke was in Afghanistan, and then Luke when he comes home, like irreparably damaged. It was all about Cassie making it big and had very little to do with the romance aspect, except for the last 25 pages of the book, which was not enough time spent focusing on the issues at hand. The characters spend the duration of this book pressed on getting caught for their fraudulent marriage, and the payoff at the end was not worth the buildup, in my opinion. Plot gets a 2 out of 10. I was so uninterested in reading this book that it took me 3 days to read it. It is not very big. Most of this book I read in 1 day at work when I had nothing else to do. I was not interested at all, and I did hope for more focus on the relationship. Do with that what you will. I gave it a 1 out of 10. My biggest qualm with this book is probably the writing. No, not the writing, the logic. If someone could, in my comments, explain to me marriage is what you make it and it's not adultery if I don't perceive it as adultery, and how that makes sense, and if you think that the military would agree with that, please let me know, because I am 100% sure from my own time in service that adultery is adultery no matter which way you paint it. Even if I don't view it as adultery, the service is going to view it as adultery. So Cass, you committed adultery on Luke, and Luke, it doesn't matter if you view it as adultery. She spent the entire time cheating on you. Y'all were married. That's that. It didn't make any sense to me. Literally, it would never, ever, ever fly in the military that I was a part of. So maybe in this fictional US Army that was the case, but no. Also, for me, it did not make sense that by the end of this book, Cassie and Luke were in love, because I'm sorry, you spent the entire time hating him until the one time that you gave him a sponge bath, and then magically he cries on your shoulder and into your hair, and now you're in love with him. Is that how it works? Is that how love works? Please enlighten me, because I don't think that that's how love works. You were attracted to him. You were in lust with him. Love was nowhere in the equation for this. Logic 2. Enjoyment. I feel like I finished it, so it gets a 2. Other than that, I have nothing else to say in terms of enjoyment. I genuinely don't know how this was made into a movie. And if you've seen the movie, let me know if you've read the book and if the movie's better than the book, because everybody on the story graph was talking about how the movie was better, which is kind of like astonishing to me, if I'm honest. Overall, this book got a 14 out of 70, which is 0.20 average, which means that on my cawpile rating system, this was a 1.25 star read. And that's that. Straight up not a great time. On par with Credence, if I'm honest. At which point, honestly, the writing in Credence was better than this. I did not have a great time with this. I'm really just thinking about donating it in a little free library near me. That's my review for Purple Hearts. Let me know your thoughts in a comment below. I'll see you in my next review. Thanks for being here. Subscribe if you're new here. Unsubscribe if you hate me. Leave me a like or dislike, depending on what your thoughts are. But I love to chat in the comments, so let me know what you're thinking. Otherwise, I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.